Well, hello everyone. I'm Megan Lefew with the Center for Profitable Agriculture, and I'm very excited to welcome you to the last session, our seventh session in the 2025 Tennessee Farmers Market Vendor Boot Camp webinar series. We are so excited to have you back with us today. Just a reminder, in case this happens to be your first session with us on the live program, that participants will keep their microphones muted and video cameras off to conserve bandwidth, but we highly encourage questions or helpful comments in the chat box at any time, and I will try to monitor those and break in with our speaker where we might be able to answer those questions or save them till the end, whatever is most appropriate. I'm very excited today to have Trevor Hunt with us from the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They have several programs available that are helpful for farmers and are applicable to farmers market vendors. And I'm really excited to have him here to share details of those programs. And I know that I'm going to learn a lot, Trevor, because I just have a very base layer of knowledge. So I'm so excited to have the opportunity to have you join us and dig a little deeper with those today. So I'm going to turn it over to you and I'll monitor that chat box.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with you all today. As Megan alluded, this is the last session, and so I like to think that you guys saved the best for last. If not, we're just going to pretend as though that's the case either way. But
Absolutely, we
certainly,
did.
well, thank you so much again for allowing me to attend. And again, my name is Trevor Hunt, and I serve as the Assistant State Conservationist for partnerships here in the state of Tennessee. Um, Prior to that, I actually served as the district conservationist in Middle Tennessee, covering Davidson and Sumner County for the past 10 years. And so I'm looking through the list and I see a couple of names that may be familiar, that I may have worked with in the past, but for the past 10 years, that's been the role that I've served in. And prior to that, I worked in East Tennessee as a district conservationist in the Sullivan County office in Bristol and then also in West Tennessee. So I like to think that I've had the pleasure of serving in all three grand divisions of the state. And West Tennessee is home for me. I'm from Carroll County, and later moved to UT Martin. Graduated from UT Martin, but I call Nashville home now. So I have a couple of slides. I certainly want to make this uh, fairly informative. So if you do have questions, again, throw them in the chat. That way you don't forget them. But if not, we'll have time at the end for some question and answer. And I'm hoping that I've left enough time to where we can actually get into some of your more specific questions because you may have some partners out there or cohorts that may also have some similar questions. So we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so NRCS's mission is essentially to assist landowners with conservation efforts and addressing resource concerns on their land. One of the things that I enjoy the most about what we do is that we are a volunteer based agency. So all of our conservation efforts are voluntary, and NRCS is under the Department of Agriculture. So we are under the USDA umbrella. I do want to give a plug to our sister agency, the Farm Service Agency, as they are the bookkeepers within USDA, and they are the record keepers, rather. They are the record keepers, and they are usually co-located with most of our NRCS offices. But the resource concerns that we look to address are going to be soil, water, air, plant, and animals. We also do have a human factor that we try to include into our conservation efforts as well. Now, today we're going to talk specifically about what NRCS has to offer as it relates to farmers market vendors and farmers at large, because our programs are not going to be necessarily specific to the type of agriculture that you choose to endeavor in, especially when it comes to the privatization of agriculture, but more so the conservation efforts that we can put on the ground. All right. So we want to focus on one-on-one personalized advice. Um, I feel as though we're at our best when we're able to sit down, have a one-on-one conversation, and we can actually get to the heart of the scenario or the situation, and we can give advice on that specific situation. We also like to help people when they're making investments on their own operations and within their local communities. And then lastly, NRCS, we generate and we manage a lot of data technology and also standards in helping producers make informed decisions. Now, there's two essential assistance types that we like to hone in on. Number one is going to be technical advice. That technical advice is, of course, free to you, a free service where you can have a representative from your local field office come out to your operation and give you advice on your operation. The second portion is going to be our financial assistance. Now, our financial assistance, of course, has become certainly more profitable and I mean more popular, and that certainly makes sense as we can all use financial assistance, and it definitely makes things uh, a little bit more incentivized when it comes to installing some of these conservation practices because there is a cost to doing so. NRCS recognizes that there are costs um, associated with improving resource concerns on your farm. And so for that reason, we provide financial assistance in various programs. So I'm going to speak to a couple of our programs, and I'm going to stay somewhat high level on these, but towards the tail end, once we get into the question and answer portion, I think we can dig a little bit deeper into maybe some site specific questions on these. So number one is going to be our CSP program. That is the Conservation Stewardship Program. And to give, I guess, another analogy of this is I like to use the good, better, best scenario. And so you have a good operation, everything is going pretty well with that operation. If you want to go from good to better, that would be the EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. But if you want to go from better to best, that would be our Conservation Stewardship Program. The conservation stewardship program is essentially a suite of practices that you can install or management systems that you can install on your farm that will aid in conservation efforts. And that is, again, our best. When I say good, better, best, I'm looking at the best of conservation and resource concerns addressing through this conservation stewardship program. But to go from good to better, which is where a lot of people, that first step is going to be, we like to use the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. Now, we use acronyms for everything within NRCS, and so most people just refer to this as the EQIP program. The EQIP program is certainly our bread and butter. This is our flagship program here in Tennessee. We spend majority of our funds towards the EQIP program. And through the EQIP program, we try to provide technical and financial assistance with the hope to maintain and improve production while conserving our natural resources and working on our landscapes. And so, an example of this is where you hear people talk about some of the individual practices that are offered. So, if you are a livestock producer, these practices would be maybe aiding in establishing rotational grazing. So, this would be fencing practices associated with rotational grazing, such as fencing, pipelines, watering troughs, and things along those lines. Maybe even temporary fencing. If you were in a row crop scenario, this may be things such as cover cropping or conservation crop rotation, and so on and so forth. And so, of course, also in more of a specialty crop scenario or an urban ag scenario, it may be high tunnels, drip irrigation, roof runoff management, and individual practices. So the EQIP program focuses on individual practices, and the CSP program focuses on a suite of practices to accomplish conservation efforts. So we also have the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, ACEP, and this is more of an easement program. A lot of people may be familiar with the Wetland Reserve Program. That was very popular, and it was actually called WRP at the time, the Wetland Reserve Program, but it's been rebranded as the Wetland Reserve Easement Program under the ACEP title. This is going to be mostly focused on making long-term agreements to put your land in conservation easements. This could be an ideal scenario if you have some land that may be marginal or may be considered to be wetland, and you want to preserve that land and ensure that good conservation takes place, you can put that in a long-term easement. And then lastly, we have the RCPP program, which is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. And these projects essentially go under two categories, just RCPP Classic and RCPP grants. Now, this is going to be more so for our partners, and usually going to be more so on a level where, let's just say, a sister agency or another outfit has the plan of a holistic concern. So if you want to look at whole watershed agreements, this will be on a large scale. So RCPP is not for individuals, but rather for larger entities to partner with us or municipalities. So within the EQIP program, we do have some specific initiatives, and a couple of the initiatives that I thought would be timely for this group. One would be our high tunnel initiative. NRCS has made the decision that we want to focus on urban ag and urban conservation. And so we have selected some of our more popular practices, and with the hopes to put more emphasis on those practices to allow for additional assistance. And so, and allow for competition to be strictly within this one segment. So that way we will allow high tunnel requesters to actually compete against other applicants that are requesting a high tunnel. So essentially, we didn't want to have a large scale row crop operation that was applying for cover crops to be competing against a high tunnel, because even though the resource concern is going to be plant health and vigor as well as potentially soil erosion, it just didn't seem as though we were getting the response that we were looking for in having these two varying types of agriculture compete with against one another. But one of the questions I like to ask is the difference between a greenhouse and a high tunnel, because most people call in and say, "Hey, I'm interested in getting a greenhouse," and I have to kindly make sure that we're on the same page and ensuring that the difference and the primary difference is it's within a high tunnel or a hoop house. It is our intention for you to actually grow in the soil profile. So we want you to actually grow in the soil profile, and we're looking to extend your growing season. And so, as you all are aware, especially when it comes to specialty cropping and market sales, at the farmers market, it's important to be the first one with produce or with goods, and then try to be the last one potentially. And so, by having this high tunnel, we look to extend that growing season and improve the health and vigor of your plants. We'll talk about this a little bit more as we get to the Q&A, but I want to kind of stay high level with the options within the high tunnel initiative. One of the beauties of the high tunnel initiative, you do have the opportunity to add additional or supporting practices to this. So it is not, you're not just bound to just one practice within that. You can add additional practices to that as well. Now, in the past, we would have a sign-up period. And so our sign-up period, we would accept applications year-round, but we would have a batching date. Now, I like to make sure I explain this so people can understand the differences and also be aware of dates. So TAP, for example, has a window of October 1st through the 7th to accept applications. That's your time period. After the 7th, the window closes, and then you will apply for the following year. With NRCS, we accept applications year round, but similar to TAEP, we do have a cutoff date for batching. And so, and that's essentially to allow for applications to be ranked against one another, and all applications received during a certain time period will be ranked against one another. And so, we have that batching date was in November of 2024 for this year. And so, in the past, if you had not met that application deadline, or application time period, if you applied in, let's just say, December of 2024, you wouldn't be eligible to receive funding essentially until the following year. And essentially it made our program a year out program. And that was difficult for a lot of producers because we would get producers excited. I would go and do events such as this, and we would have people ready to sign up, and then it would be a year before they could actually begin the process of implementing any of these practices. And it really left a sour taste in a lot of our producers' mouth. And so we were able to come up with a program called EQIP and CSP Act Now. And essentially what this does is it allows the state to set a threshold of a ranking score. And so if you are above that ranking score, then we are able to fund those applications immediately. And so it allows, if you were to sign up today on, March the 20th, if you came in and we were able to accept your application, rank your application, and your application ranked above a certain threshold, then essentially we can move forward with pre-approving and selecting that application immediately, as long as funds were available. And the really big point within that, I want to make sure I hit that, as long as funds are available, because essentially we are bound to limits of funds that are available. And so once we have exhausted those funds, we have to wait and ask for additional. And in doing so, sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. All right. So I want to make sure you are aware of the Act Now ability. So literally today, when you get off of this call, if you want to go into your service center, you could go in, submit an application, and if funds were available, then there would be a chance that you could be selected for funding this year. All right. Now, we also have groups that are identified within the Farm Bill legislation that focus on historically underserved producers. Those historically underserved producers fall into the category of beginning farmers. Now, beginning farmers is someone who has farmed consecutively for less than 10 years. And we actually look for information related to your Schedule F. So if you have not filed a Schedule F consecutively for the past 10 years, then you would be considered a beginning farmer. We also have socially disadvantaged producers. And so if you fit into some of the minority groups that fall into the socially disadvantaged group, then you could also qualify for HU rates on practice incentive payments, as well as veteran producers and limited resource producers. So if you make less than half of the median income for your prospective county, then you could fall into that category as limited resources. Essentially, what this does is historically underserved. But what this does is this gives you a higher payment rate as it pertains to incentive payments through the EQIP program, as well as the other programs that were discussed. All right. Now, the next step is, of course, to get started. So to get started, you need to reach out to your local service center. And as I alluded to earlier, our sister agency, the Farm Service Agency, they are our record keepers. And so to participate in any of our programs, you have to meet eligibility. And eligibility is just determined by your registration with the Farm Service Agency. And all that means is that you either have a lease, some type of promissory note, or ownership of this land, and you can qualify to get a farm and tract number for this respective piece of land. And then also, there are no acreage minimums. So if you have 1/10 of an acre, you can qualify to get a farm number on that prospective piece of ground. And as long as you have that, and then you meet the AGI, the adjusted gross income requirements, and that is that you are below the threshold of $900,000 annually over a 3-year average, then you qualify to participate in our programs and to apply for those programs. Now, our state is broken down into 4 areas, as you can see them highlighted here, with the pink being Area 1. Essentially, that's going to stop just about at the Tennessee River. Area 2 will take you just about over to Cookeville and to the Plateau. And then Area 3 is going to go from Cookeville to Knoxville. And then Area 4 is going to be Knoxville East. And so that is our breakdown. And within those 4 areas, there are local service centers in just about every one of those prospective counties. If there's not a service center in your county, then you will report to an adjacent county. And you can just simply Google NRCS in your prospective county, and your service center will pop up. Or you can always feel free to reach out to myself, and I can connect you with your local representative. All right. So Tennessee, again, as I spoke earlier, we have put forth an effort to ensure that we assist with urban agriculture. And so we have 2 opportunities for the general public to assist us in formulating our policies and our thoughts as it pertains to not only urban agriculture, but all agriculture. But specifically in the realm of urban ag, we created an urban ag subcommittee to increase the outreach and engagement efforts with urban farmers. And so essentially, we try to get partners, whether it be individual farms as well as entities, to assist us in in setting up essentially what's going to be our rollout for urban ag within the state of Tennessee. Now, if you're interested in having your voice heard and you want to participate, you can feel free to reach out to myself and I can connect you to our urban ag subcommittee. You'll be invited to those meetings and you can sit in and you can give your input, and you can be an aid in shaping what urban ag looks like in the state of Tennessee. Now, in addition to the Urban Ag Subcommittee, we also have a state technical committee, and I am the point person for the state technical committee. And the same concept is what we do with the Urban Ag Subcommittee, we do with the state subcommittee or the state committee. And essentially, it's just a group of non-government agencies that are willing to step in, kind of give us some input and give us information as we try to craft a program that is ideal for our participants in the state of Tennessee. All right. So again, I want to thank you all for allowing me to kind of go through these slideshows pretty quick, but I want to spend more time just on questions, and kind of digging in a little bit deeper to any questions that you may have specifically or practices that you may be interested. I can maybe give some feedback on those. So I'll stop sharing and cut my camera back on and we can go from there. And I do see there's a couple things in the chat, and so we can start going through those. And again, that's Haley asks, could I go to my local office and apply for a high tunnel? And that the answer to that is certainly yes, you can certainly do so. And thank you, Megan, for providing the link for finding your local service center. Now, Julia asks, is there a permit requirement for high tunnels? Now, this relates to where you are located. If you are in a subdivision and your HOA has restrictions on building additional, it requires ARC requests or things along those lines, then of course the answer is yes. If you are in the city limits and the stormwater department requires that you notify them, then you are required to get those additional permits. Most of those district conservationists in those respective counties are generally aware of permit requirements as it pertains to high tunnels, as we have certainly worked with codes in most counties. But I would encourage you to do research in addition to that to make sure that you are in compliance with your local city government. All right. And Deborah asks, are flower farms eligible? Flower farms are certainly eligible. I have worked with several fresh cut flower CSAs, as well as just operations in Middle Tennessee, and we certainly encourage the use of our high tunnels for flower production. All right. What kind of information or documentation do we need to bring with us to apply for the high tunnel? So the first thing you will need is just to be registered with the Farm Service Agency. Once you're registered with the Farm Service Agency, you will have a farm number. And from that farm number, that is what your local office will utilize to build your plan. And so you don't need any additional information now. To get that farm and tract number, you will need proof of ownership or proof of lease agreement with that particular piece of land. And so most oftentimes people will just simply bring a recorded deed and identification. That is usually what is brought to the office there. All right. Jonathan asks, if you are approved for funding, do you pay up front and get refunded after installation? Jonathan, that is correct. These are reimbursable programs. And so you are required to supply funds up front. Now, if you fit into any of those categories that I listed as historically underserved, so if you are a beginning farmer, then you do qualify for getting an advance payment. And that advance payment will allow you to be paid 50% of the cost up front. And so you won't be out of pocket for things. And so generally with a high tunnel, and I'm just going to use that for an example because that's the practice that most people seem to have questions about. If you were to apply for a high tunnel and we allocate funds towards that, and you met with a vendor, then we would give you the 50% up front with the hopes that you would be able to pay for the actual cost or the deposit on that high tunnel. And then after they install, uh, we can make that payment to them. So you may not actually have to be out of pocket at all if this scenario works out right. Now, most of our vendors here are familiar with our programs, and they'll just simply ask to see a copy of your contract. And with that copy of the contract, then generally they will allow you to do a 50% deposit up front, and then the remaining balance will be paid once NRCS pays you. Or we can do a direct to contractor contract, meaning that we will not pay you physically at all. Those funds will go directly to your contractor, and you have the ability to sign off on those. Cynthia asked, you mentioned if you haven't filed a Schedule F and have been farming less than 10 years, you might qualify. I am a brand new farmer, but did not get tax exempt, so I was told I have to file a Schedule F. Does that mean I wouldn't qualify? You would certainly qualify. Just because you have not filed a Schedule F or you have not filed to be tax exempt, if you do not have a Schedule F, then that just shows that you do not have necessarily farm income, or you have not claimed farm income, and we will not consider you as an active farmer as far as participating as a beginning farmer. But that does not um, disqualify you from participating in any of our programs. All right. And then Megan asked, are there opportunities for livestock producers who may be offering meat through the farmers market through EQIP, like water lines, interior fencing for rotational grazing? Yes, Megan, you certainly are right on target with that. So if we have producers who are providing meat and livestock is your form of agriculture, we can certainly assist with all things related to rotational grazing. So rotational grazing is going to be the catalyst of most of these practices. And so um, we will pay for a percentage of your interior fencing that aids in rotational grazing. If you need additional water for your livestock, we can certainly do so. If you already have the fencing that you need, but you would like to have a frost-free water trough, and you're currently having them water from a pond, we can almost do a trade-off where we will say, hey, if you allow us to fence them out of this sensitive area as this water body, then we will offset that by providing you with water troughs that will allow you to water with clean, fresh water from a watering trough in exchange for that. So there's several different caveats and different ways that you can qualify and participate, and we can definitely make that work. Now, I see Chris has asked, I've seen EQIP in the national spotlight recently. Have you experienced Tennessee farmers having their funds held up after having been approved? That was certainly something that was a huge part of the conversation shortly after the administration change. We certainly had a halt of funds being available to be paid out. In my 16-year career, that has never happened until this last um, go around. And the concept behind that was just to do a slight pause to allow for all of these programs to be reviewed. And since then, payments have been back up and running. And so if USDA or NRCS specifically makes a commitment to a contract, that is the plan for us to uphold our end of the bargain within that. And so I've never seen that happen before, but we have had producers here who did have about a 3 to 6 week delay on receiving those funds, but all those producers should have received their funds by now. All right. And Jonathan said, I believe you mentioned add-ons. Are there add-ons for these tunnels, such as ventilations and heating? So I like to tell people that we buy you the base model of a hot tunnel. So we buy you the base model. If you want to get the heated seats and the sunroof and the Bose audio system, those upgrades, you can certainly do so. We will not stop you from doing that, but our payment rates are essentially based off of the uh, baseline for these structures. Similar to our watering troughs. We pay for the baseline of a watering trough, but if you choose to get additional heating outside of the geothermal heating that we provide with those Richard Mare Fount tanks, then you can certainly do so, but it will be at your own expense. So before you actually start installing the practice, you will know to the penny how much NRCS is going to offer you towards that. Essentially, with those funds, you can actually take that and shop it around, and you can find out what's going to be the best deal for you. So, Jonathan, I hope that answers. But yes, you are able to do add-ons as you see fit, but our dollar amount is going to be capped at whatever is in the contract. All right. So if anybody else didn't get to type theirs in the chat and you want to just come off mute, you do have the ability to do so. But I think I've answered most of the questions in the chat. And if anyone did post something in the chat and you have a follow-up to my response to that, I'll certainly entertain that now as well.
Great. I really appreciate these wonderful questions in the chat. And Trevor, you handled those like a pro. I believe you've done this webinar thing before, a time or two.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That
Well,
is such helpful information and great resources available. We want as many Tennessee producers to take advantage of that as we as are
yes, yes,
possible.
yes. Yes. Well, I've enjoyed the conversation, and I hope that I was able to answer most of your questions. If you don't feel comfortable asking those questions in this format, you can certainly feel free to reach out to me directly or your local field office. Now, I do see Amanda just beat the cut and asked one more question. Do you fund high tunnels from Farmer's Friend? Or is there a particular farm supply place you have to buy? So you are not bound to any particular vendor. Farmer's Friend is one of the vendors who we have worked with in the past. Um, and so that would be an option for you to use Farmer's Friend if you chose to, but you are not bound to them. In your local field office, they have a list of suppliers that are available. There's about 12 vendors that are available, but you're not bound to them. If you found someone outside of that vendors list, you can certainly feel free to do so as well. And then I see Angel asks, are disabled farmers considered underserved too? So as it stands right now, disabled farmers do not fall into that category as being historically underserved. But if you fit into any of the other categories, such as a beginning farmer, you will still qualify for those that assistance. And Megan, do I need to put my PowerPoint back up for that last slide? I see you put that information in there, or do we just want to use the link that you've put in the chat? Megan, if you're talking, you are on mute. Well, are there any other questions?
I'm sorry, I was muted there, talking to myself. I may have missed you answering this one. Trevor, did you get to Chris's question about the terms of the EQIP contract for the producer inspections time for unit to be in service?
Yeah, so I missed that one. I'm sorry.
No
So
problem. I thought I may have missed you answering it.
So the terms of your contract, these can vary, but I will say on the surface, you have 1 year from the date of signing the contract to install said practice. After you have installed that practice, each practice has an associated lifespan, which is essentially the time frame which we feel that this practice should be in use. So, for example, if you install a fence, we expect for that fence to be up and available for 15 years. That is the lifespan of that fence. So, if you have any maintenance that needs to take place within that fence within those 15 years, you are responsible for that operation and maintenance of that fence, and you could not come back and ask for assistance on that same fence within that time period. Now, once you get outside of the lifespan of the fence, then you can come back and we can assist with making adjustments or fixing said fence. In the case of a high tunnel or a pipeline, they all have lifespans associated with those individual practices. Now, as it pertains to inspection, we will come out and inspect to ensure that whatever the practice is completed properly. And we will be there with you every step of the way. So we won't let you get to the end of a large practice and then say, hey, this does not meet. We want to be there on the front end. So you have local representatives there who, when you say, hey, I want to build 20 feet of fence, can you come out here and double check? And as long as the rest of this fence looks just like this 20, then we'll be in good shape. And I do that quite often. So that is a way to ensure that the inspection comes out ideal. So, Chris, I hope I answered that question.
Very good. Trevor, we really appreciate your time and all the information you shared, and especially answering these great questions that folks have presented. And we hope that they will contact their local service center and get hooked up with these great resources.
Great, great, great. Well, hey, I certainly enjoyed it, and thank you all for the opportunity, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you. And for our participants, if you would please take a minute or two to complete that online evaluation, that'll help us prepare for future programs and report the impacts of this one. And it does double duty in that it will help us record your attendance for the TAEP educational program. Watch your inbox. I will send a follow-up email to the series um, with a link to all the recordings on our YouTube playlist and the link to the evaluation form again if you need it. Please let us know at the Center for Profitable Agriculture if we can be of help to you, and we hope that you have a wonderful farmers market season. Thanks everybody for joining us.